What makes the city of Columbus great? The culture, the people, the institutions. You're watching a CTV original, Heart of the City.
I knew from a young age I wanted to run for office.
I'd like to introduce our auditor, Megan Kilgore.
I always had this really vested interest in service and in education. It's a bit of a misnomer. People think, the word auditor, you're sitting behind a calculator working all day on your numbers and crunching taxes, but it's really being a financial officer, kind of the CFO of the city of Columbus. And as I got into this world of public service and I really got to know what the different jobs did, this is a job where I was able to blend my love for both education, teaching people, financial literacy, with public service, and it all kind of came together. My mom taught in public education her entire life. Whether that means, hopping with one suitcase into the car in the summer and traveling to the national parks and checking out historical sites, or just encouraging me to take my own passions forward. I give her a lot of credit for just inspiring the why not in me, why not be able to, seek public office. It is a little bit daunting to put yourself out there. And one of the things that I really felt strongly about was if you have an opportunity to serve and to give back, do. And whether that be volunteer activities or helping my mom out in the classroom, why not go after it and see what happens. There were a couple other really influential women in my early life as well who were strong leaders from a business sense. They manage their own portfolios. They manage their own, financials of their companies. One of them is Jewel Evans, who is perhaps better known as the wife of Bob Evans, the Bob Evans Restaurants. But she was my greatest mentor as a young woman, outside of my mother, of course. Jewel ran that company. She did all of the business dealings, and she really taught me that not only was it good and okay to, be able to educate yourself on how to buy something like a stock, but it's really important to do so for yourself. And I remember just being really appreciative that she always talked to me like an adult, and when I was very young, and also said, you can do whatever you want to do. And you just have to teach yourself in the tools. You have it in your toolbox. You have to put in the legwork. You have to make practice makes perfect. She was a big believer in muscle memory. And I think I still carry a lot of those lessons forward. So what was it like working for Auditor Dorian? I get asked this question a lot. It's probably the second most asked question that I get at public events. I'll give you the best answer that I have. When you went to college, you had someone, maybe a college professor or even a high school teacher, someone who inspired you to go over and beyond, but who was also really, really tough, who knew their stuff, and no matter how good you did, always had really positive, constructive feedback. That's what it was like, working for the hardest professor or teacher you ever had, because he knew everything. I remember bringing in, I was really, frankly, I was a little bit proud. This is early on, very proud of a spreadsheet that I had done, and had done some analytics, and he never trusted Excel formulas. He always liked to, work on them and then trust but verify. And so I came in and I was very proud of this analytical sheet that we had worked on, and he looked at it and he just had this gut reaction that something wasn't quite right, and sure enough there was a formula error. And I just remember that being a really good reality check. There's still a reason that you have checks and balances, and it never hurts to have someone else checking your work, On Fridays, we would get together in his office and we would just have a conversation. And we would talk about the city's history. We would talk about poverty. We would talk about what's happening in our community. And I remember every Friday being really appreciative. You know, no matter how much you work or how long you work, you can never stop learning. And I say this with all, genuine respect. Every single day he keeps getting smarter. And his thirst for learning and accepting that he can still improve himself every day from a knowledge perspective is a good reminder to us all. I still get to pick up the phone and call him and ask him for a historical explanation of something, and you can't ask for anything more. You can never be the smartest in the room, but you can be the most prepared. And I really wanted an opportunity to go out and learn from other cities. How does someone like San Diego manage their capital plan? How does, let's say, Boston, issue their financial reports? There's a great benefit to being in the private sector and being able to really throw yourself into that. And so one of the things I did is that was missing from my personal resume is ability to get out in the private sector and spend time with governments all across the country. And so for a couple of years, I served as a municipal advisor. And what that meant is, it's a capitalized term, basically a financial advisor for governments. And so I worked with states and counties and cities, some school districts, and I worked with economic development districts all across our country to figure out how to plan for and finance their big projects. All of that really added to the experience necessary to come back to the city and be able to step in Mr. Dorian's very large shoes. A lot of what we do is based upon what are the current needs of the city in terms of capital planning. And so we have a section called debt management here that is responsible for the issuance of and the repayment of debt. I remember working with you during the Invest in Us campaign, where the city was trying to sell bonds to our local residents if they were interested to help finance our big capital projects. We also do all the payroll for the city. We do financial systems, which is the technology behind everything. And simply put, that means we have a large, entire citywide accounting system. We do all the financial reporting for the city. That's something, it's a vehicle called the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. It's where you can find every bit of financial detail as to the city of Columbus at a certain date. And so we publish that every 12/31. This past year, it got out in 88 days. We were the first city in America of our size, like top 25 largest, to release it this year. It's a point of pride. And why does that matter to a citizen? That means we get our information out. It's so fresh. Investors on Wall Street, people that are interested in buying our bonds, companies looking to move to Columbus, and they're wondering, how are you doing? They're able to see that document really quickly. We get a lot of applause on that. And, that level of service is spectacular. And I would put our team against anyone in the country for our financial reporting and our ability to do good financial management out of the auditor's office. Outside of financial reporting, we have accounting and operations, which is where every single dollar in the city goes. We track it, we know where it goes, and it goes in certain buckets. And then lastly, and this is the most sizable of all of our endeavors, is we have the Division of Income Tax. And the Division of Income Tax collects income tax from all of our individuals through largely paychecks, wages, as well as our business profits. That division brings in about $920 million a year, or about 80% of the city's revenues. So it's really the lifeblood of our city. Last several months has been on keeping the crew here in Columbus. And, some might say, okay, why would the auditor care about, the Columbus crew? I am a soccer fan. I like soccer very much. But more importantly, we have owners who came out of the Cleveland Browns organization, who are bringing a great deal of money to our community and investing that here. They believe Columbus is the future for soccer. They want to build a downtown stadium. They want to get more and generate more interest. But as auditor, what I care more about is the cross-utilization. The most successful stadiums are successful because of the built environment around them. Cultivated commercial office space, residential units, making sure that we're creating enough of the built environment to make that stadium successful. That's a lot of jobs, that's a lot of wages, that's a lot of income tax back to our city, and we can continue to take that in and then continue to provide our essential city services. I'm also excited about what's happening up at Maffrey, the existing site for the Crew, turning that into a community sports park. And you think about, I think we have 17 colleges and universities in our borders. Those are great sites for their future tournaments, their future championships. The role the auditor plays in that is the financing and the infrastructure. And it can be complex, something that one of the greatest quotes that Ms. Haslam, who's now the co-owner of the Columbus Crew, that she gave me was, she said, you take a meal that at the end, one of the really complex meals that you would have at a really spectacular place in like New York City, that you maybe see on like the chef's table online, something like that. And it looks complex and frankly a little bit scary. And then one day you start rolling that back. All right, well, here's where you put in the flour. Here's where you put in the eggs. Here's where you add in, the other ingredients. And over time, it comes together, but it's a lot less daunting when you start looking at the individual components. And so one of the greatest benefits of this role is just that. I get to help create some of our complex financing agreements in a way that makes sense and is very iterative. And that's one of the, I guess, the greatest pleasures of this office. We're the 14th largest city, and we're still growing so much. I'm spending a lot of time looking at population growth and what that means to our community. The auditor's office, as kind of playing that CFO role, has to understand what's happening in our local economy. That will dictate how much the city can spend in terms of our essential city services, our public improvements, where roads go, things like that. It's so important for us to constantly have our fingers on the pulse of the local economy, and it's changing. What happens in the city is not necessarily what's happening in the county, and certainly not what's happening in the region. You think about what kinds of people are moving to our city. Where are they coming from? What languages do they speak? Something that's shifting is this is a really, really great thing for the city, our diversity. And so when you look at the last time Franklin County was 10% immigrant born was in 1890. And we just hit that again. That's a spectacular statistic. But as government, we have to really be thoughtful about how are we serving our new populations, right? And so things like our division of income tax. One of the ways that we can help better serve our diverse populations is doing things like translating our tax form instructions. And that's been it's a positive product. We were able to look at all of the top languages spoken here in Columbus and be able to translate those forms. And so that hopefully we can help our citizens, our taxpayers, our residents be a little bit more successful, and again, eliminate the barriers to confusion. The challenge to that is with population growth, the capital planning. We're almost 225 square miles. That's about the size of the city of Chicago. And so when you think about, the role of government, it's figuring out how to roll out those roads, how to, fill in those potholes, how to add water lines out almost 225 square miles, and so that we can plan for these increasing populations. And that's pretty daunting right now. But we work in concert a lot with the Department of Finance and Management, as well as the respective departments and divisions around the city. And our job is going to be keeping on top of this growth, providing for our citizens to the degree they've become very accustomed to, which are those essential city services, and keep running the city as successfully as we have been. The poverty rates, especially in certain demographics here, are growing. And one of the things that I'm really looking at as auditor is where are we falling short? Wages in certain industries are very flat right now. We have a significant uptick in jobs that are at the lower wages. We have a lot of job flight to our suburbs right now. And so these are the things that I'm really watching from, especially our lens as the Division of Income Tax leader, because we have to bring in those tax dollars. And based upon what we bring in, that's going to dictate how the city can spend in the next couple of years. The more I get into this job, the more convinced I am that education is a significant difference maker for our citizens and for our workers. Right now, if you have a bachelor's degree in Columbus, only about 3.9% of the population is at or below poverty. If you have less than a bachelor's, you're up in the double digits. Even worse, if you're at high school education, you're 30% plus. One of the most alarming statistics for me personally is the fact that right now, 1 in every 4 children under the age of 5 is at or below poverty. 1 in every 4 children. And I think it's not always the easiest to talk about, but we have to. If we don't talk about it, we don't accept that some of these things are happening, we're not able to make meaningful change. And so using this office right now, being able to look at all of our economic data, I've been able to really come up with some actionable items. I really do think education is the nucleus of our community's foundation. Why are we so successful? Why are people moving to the city of Columbus? There's an economist named Richard Florida who writes this, that cities of our future have 3 things. They have technology, and we do. Columbus has great technology. We have Battelle, we have Ohio State, we have all of our colleges. We also have great small businesses that are, frankly, via our incubators, thriving here. Number 2, you have to have talent. We have that talent. We have, whether it be 52,000 students at Ohio State and growing, Columbus State, which is providing some of our most spectacular workforce opportunities in our Central Ohio area right now, or the other plethora of colleges and universities in the Central Ohio region. We have talent and it runs deep. But the third one I think is the most important, and that's tolerance. Every walk of life is supported here in Columbus. Every color of skin, every language spoken. We're striving to do better in that every day as well. But the fact is that we were a sanctuary city far beyond the title sanctuary city existed in the newspapers. We have been a city of openness. We have been a city of supporting all populations. I have a newsprint from 1916 talking about giving women the right to vote here in Columbus. Interestingly, right to vote was given to women, granted to women, well before national suffrage. We were not allowed to vote for this office, which was very amusing to me as I'm in this office now. But I think that speaks to the fact that our culture, our progressive values, our pro-people values have always been rooted in Columbus. When companies come to town and they're looking at growing here, maybe they're looking at putting a new office here, hiring employees, they are asking about our community fit. Will all of their employees be supported? That's something that has changed in my 15, 16 years in government. If their employees come and they live here, will they be able to be fully protected to rent an apartment, to get a job, etc.? And the fact is that right now around the state of Ohio, that's not true. But in Columbus, it sure is. And so I think that is what will continue to make Columbus so successful, is that we are supporting everyone, and therefore we have the ability to benefit from every occupation, every brain that comes to our city, and everyone who wants to, move here, set up a family, set up a home, and contribute back to their community. After election, I was sworn in January. It's really special. And then all of a sudden I get a phone call to be a part of the Time magazine's Year of the Women, a really cool cover that they did called Avengers. But it really, reminded me of the importance of using my role as the first elected female auditor of Columbus to help provide pathways for other individuals, men and women, who are looking to run for office for the first time. It's pretty special being in public service. At the end of every day, you get to see the tangible outcomes of your work.